Hey, this is Del Jackson. I don't have my yellow hoop stuff on tonight. I got green on tonight, but that's okay. Well, I stand out on the black. It's all right. It's a good thing. Tonight we have a special guest, LeoWard, who's been with Garden Spot. It seems like forever. We're gonna have him talk a little bit about his career, and we're really gonna focus on Curtis Waltman tonight. And he was I should know this, but he was one of the top scorers in the yellow. I think Whistler was number one. I think he was number two. I think
Mike Whistler was.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Coach Ward?
Doing fine.
Good.
I'm getting ready to start my 44th year coaching at Garden Spot.
That's
right now I'm coaching ninth grade. Back in the early and mid 90s, I was a girls varsity coach. Boys varsity coach a couple of years after George Strapp retired. So I've been doing ninth grade for about the past 3 or 4 years. And when Curtis Waltman played, I was George Strapp's JV coach and varsity assistant.
Okay, so you saw when you were coaching, you saw every one of Curtis's 2,000 plus points.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So let's start with him. And let's talk about him coming up into the program. So you as a assistant coach and George the head coach, did you guys know this kid was going to be special when he was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
Yes, I used to help officiate Garden Spot youth basketball games. I wasn't doing it a great deal when Curtis was like a 5th or 6th grader. But when they needed help, sometimes they would give me a call. So I probably saw Curtis play maybe 3 times while he was in 5th and 6th grade. And he was head and shoulders above every other kid that played. And you could just tell he was one of those kids that had a sense of everything that was going on around him. So
let's go over his career a little bit. So as a freshman, I'm assuming he played varsity?
Yes. Coach Strout brought him up as a 9th grader. He didn't start any varsity games as a 9th grader, as I can recall. I know he didn't play any JV games. I think Coach Strout's idea was he didn't want to move him in too fast. Curtis easily could have started as a 9th grader. We were blessed enough that we had enough older players that were talented that Curtis could get in as a substitute. But as the year went on, he played more and more, and it became obvious he just had a special gift as a scorer.
So I saw Curtis play, but a lot of our people have never saw him play, our current fans. So could you describe him physically and how he played the game to score all those points?
Okay. Curtis wasn't a real big kid. I bet you he was maybe 5'9", 5'10", kind of slightly built. He had amazing basketball quickness. He was fast naturally, but he just had amazing basketball quickness. And the thing that made Curtis real special was that he had an unbelievable shooting range. I mean, I literally saw him many times at the old Garden Spot gym take maybe 2 dribbles across midcourt and pull up and drain a 3-pointer. So when teams brought defenses out on him, even to double team him, he had, like I said, he had a natural basketball quickness with the ball, a real quick spin move. He could split double teams, and he was a real finisher. So when he got close to the basket, he got the ball up on the backboard, and he either scored or was fouled. It seems like almost every time.
So he was, I'm assuming he had really great body control. He was driving. Mm-hmm. I saw him play a couple of times, but not to the extent that you did. So as he developed, so freshman year, he's working his way in. He's maybe 6th or 7th man. So sophomore year, he's starting. So how did it go in his sophomore year?
His sophomore year, I don't know if you remember the Blonde Bombers from Garden Spot. Okay, Curtis was a sophomore that year. So we had a team that we easily went 10 deep. And we went 10 deep with real good quality basketball players. So Coach Strout, we ran a real up-tempo game, a lot of pressure defense. I'm trying to recollect over 20 years ago, but I don't think Curtis started every game his sophomore year. I think one of his breakout games when he was a sophomore was when we played Lebanon at our place. It was towards the end of the first half of section play. And I wouldn't be surprised. I know we were undefeated, and I wouldn't be surprised if Lebanon was. Curtis had a real strong first half against them. And the thing I remember was they decided to come out and play a zone. And the first play of the second half, Curtis did that thing I mentioned where he took maybe two dribbles across midcourt and drained a three, and may have hit another three or two after that, force him back into the man. I don't remember who wrote the story up in the newspaper, but we did get like the main story the next day. And the reporter mentioned something about the second half, Lebanon opening up in a zone, and Curtis Waltman took the ball across midcourt and hit a three-pointer from Chester County. It was far away. And I'm if memory serves, I think from that point on, Curtis became even a more integral part of everything that we were doing that year.
So sophomore year, he's getting better. Junior year and senior year, he probably just takes off crazy.
Yeah, his junior year, we lost some seniors from that Blonde Bomber team, but we still had a real strong squad. We were undefeated in the section Curtis's sophomore year, and we were undefeated in the section his junior year. We weren't as deep as we had been the year before, and I'm sure Curtis started every game, and he really became an amazing offensive player.
Yeah. Do you remember about his scoring averages junior, senior year?
I know his senior year, Curtis scored over 1,300 points his senior year. So whatever that was for section games, he had a high scoring average. He had one 60-point game his senior year.
Do you remember who that was against?
It was against Lancaster Mennonite. It was at our place.
Okay, we're talking to Coach Groff, so he might remember that one.
I can guarantee you, Coach Groff is going to remember that one. He can explain some of the circumstances that transpired during that game with Coach Strout.
Okay, all right. I'm sure it was interesting. I'm sure. So let me ask you this from a coaching point of view. Obviously, Curtis played on some really good teams, and obviously he was quote unquote the man for the last 2 years at least. How did you guys prepare going into leagues and districts, as you know, and you know, you saw some of the things that coaches will try to do to a good player in the league. But then when you get into the LLs, when you get into districts, when you get into states, you got usually a different level of athleticism anyway. So how did you guys prepare for box and one, triangle and two, and what did you do in practice to free him up?
Well, going back to Coach Strout again, George was an amazingly organized person when it came to coaching, and he always had an idea about who we were going to be playing in league playoffs He figured out some things, and we would send some guys out and take some video on some of the teams we were playing in district and states. So we really didn't do anything in particular, because we were very competitive at practice, and things that everybody had tried against Curtis basically didn't work. I do not remember a whole lot of box and ones. It was particularly his sophomore and junior year. You just couldn't do that with our squad.
Okay.
A lot of teams did try to either double team him or send guys after him when he had the ball, try to find a weak link on our team. So a lot of teams really focused on double teaming. We didn't see a lot of zones when teams played us, because I think Curtis's reputation as a shooter preceded him, and you just couldn't, if you brought your zone out far enough where you took him out of his range, it just opened everything up in the middle for the big guy. So we almost always saw man-to-man. And through the entire time that Curtis was with us, I think the only team that really had any kind of success, defensive success with him, was Steel High. It was Curtis's senior year, and we played them for the district championship. They had two guys, I don't know their names, but super quick, real intense. And that was the first tandem of players that kind of took Curtis out of his game.
Okay. And then let's talk. I have your LL records as far as playing in the LL tournament, but I don't have anything in the district. So you gave me Steel High. Who else did you guys play in the districts that you remember?
Oh, I remember we played. I think we played Hershey twice. We played. Is it Greenville? It's right way at the south end of our district.
Not sure, Coach.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall.
That's okay.
I know we made district semifinals, but I at this point I just can't recall the teams.
Did you guys get to states any of those years?
We got to states. My recollection is all 3 years that Curtis played. And I know his sophomore year, we lost our first state playoff game. And the reason I remember that is we played up at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, and that's where my family's from. Okay.
And do you remember who else you guys played junior, senior year?
No.
Okay. So did you win any of those games?
I want to say that we may have won. We never made it real far in the state tournament. I know one time we went up to Shamokin, and whatever team we played at Shamokin, we won that game. But that district championship game, his senior year against Steel High, that was the only district finals we made those 3 years. And I can't recall what happened after we lost that district championship.
That's okay. We can dig into PIAA. The PIAA has it's pretty interesting. They have the brackets of the seedings and the scores and stuff. So we can go back and get that. We can get that information. So tell me this. I know, and a lot of the fans will not know, but Curtis was an excellent football player as well.
Yeah, there are two when I was thinking about Curtis after you had emailed me, the two qualities that really stick in my mind about him. First was his competitiveness. At practice, he didn't want anybody to beat him in sprints. If we were doing competition drills, 1-on-1, 2-on-2 competition drills, he did everything he could to win. And it was great because, again, particularly that blonde bomber group and the juniors that were on that team, there were a lot of players that had that same kind of competitive drive. I was told one time by one of the gym teachers that Curtis was the same way in gym class, that no matter what they did, if it involved a race or a competition of any type, he wanted to make sure that he finished first.
Nice.
So that kind of competitiveness that you hear people talk about in, big time athletes, that was something that I think more than any other player that I've coached in high school, Curtis exemplified that. And the other thing was just what a good athlete he was. He wasn't a lifelong football player, but I do recall his senior year, he got the player of the week, and it was two real good teams our team had just played. E-Town was one of them, and E-Town had a real strong squad. It was another real good team in our section, and I believe it was Mannheim Central, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I do remember that in that 2-game stretch between him running and passing as a quarterback, playing defensive back and getting interceptions, running us off and punts, he had over 800 yards total offense in those 2 games. And his senior year, he went out for track for the first time. And I was a track coach too. And he just excelled at the 200 and 400. I believe Curtis won the league championship in the 400. And for someone who had never really run that kind of race before, I thought that was an amazing feat. And I couldn't get up to the gym today, but I know for a long time, Curtis had the 200 and 400 record on our track board, and he may still have one or both of them.
Nice.
So a real competitive nature and just a real gifted kind of athlete, probably would have done well with any sport that he played.
So obviously you had some really good connections with him as an assistant coach, and we've talked to that with other coaches, that as an assistant it's a little bit different than the head coach type of deal. How difficult was the decision for him to play football and not to play basketball?
I was really surprised about it. Curtis was close with Coach Strout, but he had that same kind of relationship with Steve Lever. And Steve Lever was the head football coach when Curtis played. So I was very surprised on one end that he decided not to pursue basketball, but at the same time, I wasn't that surprised that he decided to play football. I think he maybe looked at that as more of a challenge. He went to Villanova, and I believe he went on some type of football scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what type of schools were recruiting him for basketball?
No, George kind of took care of all of that. I don't recollect any coaches ever coming to practice or anything like that.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because my mind's jogging here. And as again, I watched this team a couple of years. I don't know quite where I was in my life of that. I might have been in Virginia. But anyway, I remember, and this might not have been your team, but I remember something called the Three Stooges at the end of the game.
Stooges, yes.
Yeah, the Stooges. Go ahead, talk to me about that, because I thought that was the coolest thing. I'm there like, oh, this is great. Go ahead.
Stooges was one of the presses that George came up with. And basically what he did was he took the 3 quickest, best athletes that we had, and he put them up in the around the foul line area in the teams in their backcourt. And their job was to he wanted 2 guys to double team, didn't matter which 2 they were, and then the 3rd guy became an anticipator. So you see what the 2 double teamers were doing, and then you just try to read and go for a play. If a team passed out of the double team, one of the Stooges would follow the pass. There'd be another double team, and the off Stooge would just rotate to the middle of the floor and become an anticipator again. The 2 back guys basically made sure that nothing got behind them. And if a team tried to run a presso style, try to bring guys up into the middle of the floor, those guys would almost play a man-to-man type thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's funny what I remember.
And George did that. George did that both in full court, and the call for that was 40 Stooges. He also ran it as a half court defense, and the call for that was 20 Stooges.
Okay.
And all those kids, they loved, of all the presses that George ran, I think they all loved playing Stooges.
I think the name was it just stuck in my head. I'm like, this is awesome. This name is awesome. Mm-hmm. But I didn't quite understand it, so I couldn't steal it. I couldn't steal it when I was coaching, but yeah. I thought that was fantastic. Anything else you got to share with us about Garden Spot in general? Let me ask you this as a coach. You've been at it for 44 years. What's changed in the game for you, for teams that you've coached from, way back when to now?
Obviously the game has evolved. I know a lot of people today really think that kids are so much different, and there's a lot of talk about getting a trophy for any type thing. But even the kids that we coach now, they really want to get better. They know when they've played a good game. They know when they haven't played a good game. Everything is wide open, mm-hmm. Obviously. I was around when the 3-point shot first came in. And for many coaches, Barry Pouts included, you never took a 3-pointer in transition. Mm-hmm. There was maybe 1 or 2 designated people that could take the 3-point shot. Mm-hmm. And it was still a lot of, let's try to pound the ball inside. Let's not take a lot of long distance shots, rebound, play defense. The other real big change that happened was when that motion offense came in. Mm-hmm. Barry Pouts was one of the first coaches in our league. It wasn't called the flex offense at the time, mm-hmm. but he put the flex offense in, and I remember not seeing any of the other teams running that. And then Barry also was an early guy that we didn't call it a motion offense; it was called the passing game, and he put that in. I think nowadays a kid needs to be a much more rounded mm-hmm. player than he used to. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure, like everybody everywhere, our bigs, they're working on perimeter moves and ball handling, and our guards work on posting up and under moves and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of our offenses, like so many nowadays, players are also interchangeable. So you can bring your big guy away from the basket. Most real good big guys nowadays are really good shooters too. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. That's interesting. We had Bobby Borden on today. He's coaching freshman ball at Warwick, and he mentioned the same thing that you did. It's like kids today are same as they were 20 or 30 years ago, as far as this is what's important. This is the kids being the kids, and there's other distractions out there in the world, but they're still basketball players. You know, when you guys get them as ninth graders, they've already been through, you know, we got cut. They're already starting to establish who can do what and who can't. And, you know, the pecking order's been established a little bit. It's just a matter of getting better and teaching the kids how to get better with that. And I think it's interesting for me that I go around and I can see some of these quote unquote older coaches coaching the freshman ball, because the head coach knows that the older coaches have that stability, that anchor. It's like, we know what's important. We're not the next Coach Krzyzewski. We're not screaming and hollering at the ref, trying to get our guys better. So I commend you and anybody else that continues to coach, because you love coaching. I mean, obviously.
And with that age too, no matter what they're going to do later on as varsity players, fundamentals are fundamentals. I mean, that hasn't changed. I remember one time I was at a clinic and Pete Carell was going over the Princeton offense, and he made a lot of funny comments. But the one thing he was saying about the Princeton offense, he said something along the lines of, if it's really going to be tough, if you don't have shooters, you probably aren't going to be able to run this offense. And then he paused for a second and he said, although if you don't have shooters, you're not going to be able to run any offense.
Right. Yeah.
For the younger kids now, it's a lot of fundamentals. I had an interesting conversation years ago with Warren Goodling. I'm not even sure if he would remember it, when I was a varsity coach and he was at Hempfield. And we were talking, and he made a comment about how a lot of the players that he had, and it was the same with us, basically have played mostly organized basketball from the time they were young. That the going out and going to the playground and playing and learning how to call your own fouls, learning how to officiate your own games, kind of running a freelance offense. He said that's something that he thought doesn't happen as much as it used to.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing that, I guess in all sports, kids start in an organized setting young, which is good, but at the same time, some of them never quite learn how to play on their own and just to almost be their own coach when they're out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I got a quick Petey Carell story for you. So I was up at 5-Star Camp. Bill Foster and Harry Lickwat, they ran that camp up there. They call it the All.
I went there in 70 or 71. I went there as a high school player. Bob Lanier was the guest that Harry Litwack and that had. You're talking about the one that was in the Poconos, right?
Oh yeah. They called it the Pocono All Stars, and they couldn't.
Yeah, I was there 1 year, and that's who came the week we were there. Bob Lanier was there all week.
The Pocono Mosquito Camp. That's what they should have called it. I mean, it was crazy, but we were up there, and Coach Foster would always bring in a pro one day, and he would always have, really good coaches from college come in, and Coach Carell would come on just about every year. It was getting towards the end of that run. In fact, I think I was up there last year, but I felt my oats a little bit. I was up there, and it was like my 5th or 6th year, and I was in charge of the boat people and the cafeteria guys, and I didn't have to do as much coaching, which I missed. But anyway, we knew Petey was coming in, and we weren't allowed. We had to give our keys when we went in there as staff. We couldn't drive off campus. Coach didn't want anybody going out and raising Cain and being messed up coming in the next day. So we had to give our keys to the his managers basically, and the managers took care of things. And if you needed something, you talk to the managers. Well, I knew Petey was coming in, and Petey used to sit by that old pool every day, read the Wall Street Journal. He'd be out there. He'd have his orange shorts on, and he'd be smoking a cigar and everything. So I told the manager, I said, give me a pack of cigars. And he looked at me like, no, seriously, here's $10. Give me a pack of cigars. I don't care what they look like. And we always had a coach's clinic. He always had one evening where the kids were watching movies or doing something. And we just had a coaching clinic with one of these coaches, and Petey was the speaker. I came in there. I had everybody have a cigar. We come tromping in there, you know. Oh, Foster! I thought Foster was going to throw me out of camp right there. I thought it was all over. It was fun. Petey laughed. He thought it was great. So that's my Petey Carell story. I had a kid. I was coaching this one team, and kid was from Trenton, New Jersey. He was a good player, but he was a little nutty in the head. Wasn't a real hard worker, and we were doing drills, and Petey was doing the full court stuff, and he watched this kid, and then he saw him practice a little bit, and then when we went back to lecture, he said to the kid, he says, "You like the library?" And the kid looked at him like, "What?" He says, "Well, you better like the library, kid, or you ain't gonna play basketball." I just laughed so much. He said, "You ain't playing for us. I know that." I was like, oh man. So anyway, that was my Petey Carell story. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed being up there. I really did. So hey, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
And you know, it's always good chatting. I love chatting with the quote unquote old timers and guys that've been around and guys have seen this and guys have seen that, and it's a good perspective. And then we'll try to get some of this information on Curtis. We'll try to get it in our new book, and we'll try to get you a copy. How about?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
All right. Hey, thanks, Coach. Good night. Keep up the work.
Good talking to you, Dell.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.